What we're going to be watching right now is that there is a rebellion brewing in the MAGA movement where the more extreme elements are upset that Trump announced a deportation moratorium on people within certain industries. These are things that were predictable, like agriculture, like hospitality, like entertainment, like construction, where if you deport all of your labor, you're of course going to increase costs and you're of course going to delay and screw up the businesses involved. Every single lib and neocon has been screaming about this for a decade because we basically thought that Trump's policies were nonsensical, but the hardliners won out in the first 90 days or 120 days of the Trump admin. But then it seems like with the flack that Trump has caught, he's backing off a little bit, but of course he's mercurial. So he might, I don't know, freak out and reverse course again shortly. So Nick Fuentes is probably one of Trump's most hardcore critics. He's also funny and entertaining. He's a Christian nationalist and a race realist. So he's kind of like the most extreme kind of like leader of the movements that could be critical of Trump. So we're going to see what he has to say about it and hopefully laugh and make some real points.
I talked a little bit about this last night. This is kind of a conversation which has been emerging on the dissident right, especially in the past year. It's concerning these people like Matt Walsh and Charlie Kirk and Jack Posobiec and many mainstream conservatives who for many years were the conservative establishment, are the conservative establishment. And what comes with that is they are conservative establishment gatekeepers. They have towed the line. They have maintained a very moderate, very lame, blue-pilled form of conservatism for my entire adult life. Obviously, now things have changed. Elon Musk acquired Twitter. We have free speech. Now the red pill is going mainstream. And those things are directly related, by the way. Now that people are not being blacklisted and censored and shadow banned for saying something to the right of Sean Hannity, overnight the red pill has gone mainstream. And that has happened contrary to the wishes of the political establishment. People are becoming red-pilled because it is unignorable. Without the crushing, oppressive weight of constant censorship, escalating, suffocating, AI-powered censorship, the moment that that is relieved, the moment that they take their boot off of our necks, everybody immediately gets red-pilled on race, on Israel, on immigration, on everything. That's all it took. For our entire lives, we were propagandized by very centralized media monopolies on television, on radio, and print. Then social media and the smartphone came around, reached mass adoption in 2015 and 2016. People started to get red-pilled back then. They called it the alt-right. They called it the Trump movement. Big tech caught on. They shut it down. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube ratcheted up the censorship over time like the frog in boiling water. And we woke up one day in 2021 and the president of the United States was banned from the social platforms.
Holy shnikes. I'll try to save myself from a little bit of profanity, but I have a feeling that well is not going to last forever. This is a total rewriting of history from my perspective, okay? So I'll agree that Con Inc. are the gatekeepers and they sell a more sanitized, normalized, ad-friendly version of conservatism. We can agree there. Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter enabled the normalization of the dissident right. I agree with that. Everyone is red-pilled on race to immigration in Israel, and all it took was the elimination of censorship. Dude, Justin, I'm almost talking to you directly, okay? No, you guys are still fringe. You're still dissident. You're still loud on social media, but you do not Dude, just go to a house party, right? Go to a house party. Go to a cocktail party. Go downtown and walk around and talk to people about red pill ideas. Tell me that you guys are winning the fight for public consciousness when you go to like a normie Mexican restaurant downtown and you walk around and you go, well, obviously this is kind of freak behavior, so let's not to go too crazy with it. But let's just say you have friends. Start talking to them about, average black IQ. Start talking to them about the average IQ of indigenous Americans. Start talking to people about like alcoholism or child abuse in indigenous communities. There's no way that you can just walk up to random normies and try to quote unquote red pill them on race, and you're not going to be socially castigated as some kind of freak. There's no way that you're going to hit them on immigration. And yeah, you're going to get like normie takes on immigration. Like, yeah, we need to take care of our people first. You'll get that, but you're not going to get these GD Mexicans and Central Americans are ruining America. That's not what you're going to get from normies. Same thing with Israel. You know what you're going to get? You're going to get my position. My position is effectively like Israel has a right to exist, but they're going a little bit hard in Gaza. That's what you're going to get. So pretending that the entire country is with you is totally cringe and stupid. And not just that I was raised with a narrative that's dead. And it's not because it's dead because it's untrue. It's dead because people no longer regurgitate it because they're cowards. Okay? The narrative that I was raised with is that the mob is easy to stoke fear and anxiety and rage into, and therefore easy to manipulate, which is why we have republicanism, the what the party used to be allegedly, which is you have a bunch of smarter, educated people who are groomed for politics and power, people who like are intentional and care about the world, and you elect them to be their representatives so they can make good choices about the future of the country. Republicanism is supposed to be representative democracy, where intelligent representatives balance the needs of the country along with the needs of their constituency. That's the point of republicanism. And so for Nick to do this appeal, like, oh, TikTok became big, therefore my side became popular, that does nothing for me, because I think the average person is a lunatic. I think the average person, when put into a fearful mob, is a lunatic. So no, this doesn't work for me. I think this is cringe to say, oh, well, everybody agrees with me. If everybody agrees with you, you're probably wrong. Your narrative is probably too simple. You probably have no nuance in your narrative. Anyways, chat's popping off, so I want to read a little bit of their stuff. Foundational White Wakandan is a hilarious screen name. I have a feeling you're going to say some of the most schizo shit I've ever seen in my chat, but Foundational White Wakandan is a crazy, crazy screen name. Nick's last live stream on Rumble had over 50K live viewers. I mean, that's good, Foundational White Wakandan, but let's take a look at this. Number one, Rumble and Cozy have been accused of botting, but let's ignore that. Let's just assume that it's 50,000. I watch Nick because I like hating on Nick. So there's going to be a portion of the audience that hates him. And then let's say that he has an audience comparable to Destiny or comparable to Hassan Piker. Let's say it's a few 100,000 people. You're talking about 300,000 out of 330 million. I don't even know if I did that right, but 9.09 e to the negative 4. It's a very small number. It's a very small number when it comes to the percentage of the population of the United States. I'm going to try not to get too distracted, but again, chat's popping off, so I kind of want to read their stuff. I'm going to read things that either interest me or do at Counterpoints. We're only like, 30 minutes into the stream and we're breaking 70. Once we hit 100, it's actually almost impossible for me to read chat, where I can read every chat message. So just start doing the at Counterpoints at Valor Media if you want me to read your comment. LB says conservatives forgot to conserve the Constitution. Yeah, and there actually is a difference in allegiance between conservatives who want to conserve a white majority in Christianity versus people who want to conserve the Constitution of the United States. It's actually they're different groups, which is scary. Conservative liberalism says, I forgot how fringe the internet can be. I use left and Democrats interchangeably in the real world. Yeah, people use normies use leftist as interchangeable with liberals and Democrats. That's crazy. Short Stack Goblin says, Nick can't go outside. One of his groypers would show up with a crossbow again. Maybe. Razzle says, how about you go into a room full of Gen Z and ask about Israel? We know where the country is going. Razzle, I'm going to... This is like... Go into a room of 19-year-olds and ask them about Israel. And by the way, 70% of the people who are anti-Israel are leftists. They do it because it's edgy. They do it because it's cool. They do it because Hassan Piker says so. Acting like I'm going to walk into a college. The local college to me is University of Central Florida. I also have like Rollins College in Valencia and a few other colleges around me. Acting like if I go into those colleges and then I say, hey, how do you feel about Israel? And then there's a generally negative sentiment that they're all going to be like groypers or dissident right is the biggest cope in the world. That is insane cope. I guarantee you that on college campuses, talking smack about Israel, it's 2-1 or 3-1 leftists versus right wingers who dislike Israel. Cameron Mosley says, is yours a natural democratic republic everywhere else around again as a theocratic anti-individual state? You're going to have to rephrase that, brother. Is yours a natural democratic republic everywhere else around again? Yeah, you're going to have to rewrite that sentence, bro. Listen, I'm not your English teacher. I'm not grading your homework, but you need to write a sentence that has one idea, and then you need to write another sentence that has a different idea. Bud123 says, it does not matter because liberals and Democrats are not honest and they celebrate young men falling behind in other statistics of their disadvantage. Yeah, well, we should probably fight for everybody to stop being so crazy, Bud123. We should probably fight for like the normal sane Republicans to keep being sane, and we should fight for the Democrats who are crazy to get socially ostracized so we can, I don't know, not have a country that falls apart. I know that's crazy in this day and age to try to get people to be less crazy, but that's what I'm trying to do. Dennis says, this is madness of social media. The village idiots used to be isolated. Now them and their bad ideas find each other online, but they are still village idiots. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you. You and I are same. Justin says, that's not the point. Nick does not care for the masses. Then why is he appealing to the masses as a part of his argumentation, Justin? He obviously cares about the masses. He wants to red pill the masses. He's arguing that the masses are already red pilled. What are you talking about? Bud123 says, part of the reason why young men voted for Trump, if Trump is advocating to go back to the days where women are in the kitchen, it may be easier to get a date, hypergamy. Well, not just that, but he promises to return to a golden age that they never knew, right? Coffee McKeer says, the Kruger studies show people who believe in conspiracies are more likely to think the majority of people across the political spectrum agree with them. Yep. They're just too scared to say it. Justin says he only cares about young white men. He wants young white men to get rich and change the country. Okay. Cool. Average person is tribal just as a pair of their extreme. All right, you guys are just saying shit to piss me off. Gibbs Ma reparations says foundational white Wakandan. Well, you're going to have to ask LB for it, okay? LB is our resident black gal. So I'm going to appoint her as the person who is responsible for foundation and foundational white Wakandan reparations. You can talk to her about it. All right. Anyways, I'm going to read like one or two more, and then I'm going to get back into it. Bud123 says 60% of young men are single, while 30% of young women are single. So yeah, young men would vote for Trump to go back in time. Cool. All right. Anyways, you guys are crazy. You guys are popping off already. Let's flow. Let's get through the content.
People are being banned for disagreeing with the government on COVID, mandatory vaccines, a war against Russia, BLM and the death of George Floyd, among other things, the election, and that there were 70% mail-in ballots. And now that that censorship is gone, once again, for the first time since 2015, at the advent of social media, now everybody has become red-pilled on everything. and we have to address what is happening, which is that the political establishment is now co-opting the red pill. They're co-opting certain positions on race, on immigration, on Jews in Israel to placate a very radical, very energetic, and suppressed, repressed white majority in the United States.
Welcome to liberalism, B word. Lol. Get co-opted, son.
Because the white majority in the United States has felt this way for a long time. If you talk to any normal white person at any time over the past 40 or 50 years, they would say the same things about immigrants speaking English, about press one for Spanish, about the amount of illegals, about the amount of immigrants, about the amount of diversity, about the amount of black crime, about these wars in Iraq, free trade. They would have felt the same way in 1990, in 2000, in 2010, in 2020. But now that those people have a voice, now that those people get to talk back, and it's not just the television talking at them, now the establishment conservatives and Republicans are playing catch up. Very quickly, they have to learn how to emulate how real Americans sound and the beliefs that real Americans have held for a long time, in particular, the most energetic and the most right-wing and the most vigorous and the most intelligent elements in the right wing.
This doesn't read to me as excitement or enthusiasm. This reads to me as fear that the energy, the intelligence, the hardcoreness of the dissident right is going to go get co-opted by Con Inc. That's what this reads like to me.
And so I saw this morning. Jack Posobiec, Charlie Kirk, and Matt Walsh.
Jack Posobiec sucks so much.
They work for Turning Point USA and Daily Wire. They all tweeted in unison at the same time. They said, we need an immigration moratorium for third world immigration. We've had too many of them. They're ruining our country, and it's got to stop. And they almost said verbatim the exact same thing, as if a memo went out. As if they were all in a group chat and they coordinated the release of this talking point. They all said, we need an immigration moratorium. Now, this is notable. Before we pass judgment on their intentions or the consequences of this change, first, let's acknowledge this is an inflection point. Because all of these people for 10 years were against an immigration moratorium. For 10 years, Matt Walsh and Charlie Kirk and Jack Posobiec, they weren't neutral. They were vocally and explicitly and militantly against an immigration moratorium. Take it a step further. Charlie Kirk said we should staple green cards to diplomas. That means 10 million Indians immigrating to the United States. That was 5 years ago. Now, all of a sudden, all of them who were pushing the opposite for 10 years are now saying we need an immigration moratorium.
Yeah, it could be because they're stupid. I mean, that's pretty dumb. Listen, I'm all for pronatalism. I'm all for getting domestic Americans to through a pronatal culture, through a pro-family culture, whatever that means. Getting the birth rate up to 2.15, so we're not reliant on immigration in order to make up an economic stopgap. I don't have any problems with that. However, I also don't have any problems with immigration. I'm of the Full Metal Jacket mentality. It's a very politically incorrect quote, but it's effectively inside every Vietnamese person is an American waiting to crawl out, right? Freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, right to self-defense, due process, limited government, all that kind of stuff. These aren't just localized goods. These aren't just things that are good for white, Caucasian, Northern European Americans. These are universal goods. This is probably the way that most governments should be run. And even if they're not run identically to the United States, because the United States has plenty of flaws, they should take inspiration from the United States and they should modify our ideas into being implemented in whatever context is appropriate for their own nations. So for this to be like, well, we have to maintain a Northern European Caucasian majority. It's like, no, we don't. Now, you know, maybe it would be good to have everybody speak English so we can all speak the same language. Maybe it would be good to have an enforced civic culture. That way we all agree or at least understand the constitutional republic that we have inherited from our forefathers. That's probably good. But to say that all of a sudden, you know, we're going to be at 40% white, 30% Hispanic, 13% black, 5% Asian, and then whatever remaining percentage miscellaneous, that all of a sudden the country's going to fall apart. You're just full of shit. You're just lying. I'm going to read chat because Nick's pissing me off a little bit. I need to get more caffeinated so I can respond to him more substantively. But, you know, let's face it, we're warming up. R. Hickernell says, did you see that Destiny posted the shooting range footage? Yes, it was very funny. In some of them, I looked very muscular and very handsome. In some of the pictures, I look a little chunky, but that's okay. That's what I am. Rude says, resident black gal. Yep, LB is our... LB, I'm sorry that white people foist their racial bullshit upon you. However, I'm going to do it as well. You are now our liaison to foundational white Wakandans. So, you know, if we have foundational white Wakandans in chat, I expect you to talk to them about whatever reparations or lack of reparations they're entitled to. LB says, I still have seen any legislation to suggest the Democratic Party has trans legislation. Where, when, and where? I'll wait. Okay, it's a culture thing. DJ Isolated says, Nick wants to be the Tupac of the right, the guy that inspires the guy to set it off. Yeah, probably. Sten Franklin says, Nick is an authoritarian who uses populist rhetoric. Why would he do that if not to appeal to the masses? Yep. Wakanda isn't real, so who gives a fuck? Well, I guess that's our opinion on foundational white Wakandans and whether or not they're entitled to reparations is Wakanda isn't real, so who gives an F? Rude says, is Valor Media your main streaming channel? Yeah, Monday through Friday, except for Tuesday. I'm here. On Tuesdays, I'm live on Counterpoints. Razzle Jerry says, a highly motivated and ideological minority has always been the ones who take power. This is a story that keeps repeating over history from the founding fathers to neoconservatives. Groypers will win. I think you're too optimistic about your own position, brother. Shaved Dog Butt says, is it just me, or does it seem like it would be super easy to AI deepfake Fuentes? His setup is so consistent. Go for it. I don't do, they call them gay ops in online politics, where you do like psychological operations against other people. I don't do that because I think it muddies the water and then people don't know what's true anymore. So if you guys want to do gay ops, that's on you. I'm not going to do any gay ops. Dr. Plague Doctor says, I'm trying to think of solutions to the problem of the over engagement with digital media. First, though, would be a personal data usage tax, but I don't know. Thoughts? Well, I'm not taxing people for using the internet. LB says, how are white people repressed? Maybe it's more like those accustomed to privilege feel like equality is oppression. I don't know if that's entirely true. I would say the oppression, repression wasn't, you know, I don't think it was racialized, because if you were like a giga progressive, you weren't oppressed, even though you were still white. I think it was just like a moderate conservative, like anti-conservative social pressure and social media pressure to go along with COVID, to go along with BLM, to go along with other progressive movements, to stop using the R slur, to stop using the F slur, to stop using the N word, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And while progressives and liberals can make arguments for why you should want to do those things anyways, that's not actually like a flat playing field on which all people can participate. That actually is excluding a healthy chunk of like young white males and conservatives from participating in these conversations on equal footing. So you can say that they're bad, but that's not true free speech. Free speech includes the ability to say bad things. Karen Mosley says, Nick, you always have the ability to talk back. You just didn't like the fact that you don't have power. Nick is an imbecile. I don't know about that. I feel like Twitter was pretty muted in a progressive and liberal stance 5 years ago, 6 years ago. What is he talking about? Well, welcome to the stream, Aaron Roman. Mexicans are indigenous people, so, well, they're half indigenous, half not indigenous, right? Some of them are of Spanish descent. Connor changed the word stupid to racist. Okay. Aaron Roman, it's been a problem for 4 decades. It needs to be more accessible and more efficient. Don't know what you're talking about. Yes, we do. We are not blank slate liberals. Yeah, I know. That's why you need to be propagandized into being liberals. I'm going to put you in my little think tanks. I'm going to put you in my public school education where you think that freedom of speech and freedom of conscience and right to self-defense and limited government is a good thing. Shared American vision in our lifetime? Well, not unless we start bullying people. Voided Parrot says, I mean, what is he whining about? That they changed their policy positions to ones he believes are popular and correct? No, he's whining about the fact that it's disingenuous. Only Europeans can create the civilizations we love as Americans. Justin, don't make me go on like I'm not going to do a diversity is our strength memes, but don't make me do like a 5-minute historical recitation of advanced, socially complex, non-murderous societies that existed prior to European contact. I don't want to do it, so don't make me do it. Anyways, getting back into the content.
And I was very critical of this last night on my show. And I was critical about it today on Twitter. I said, wow, the memo must have gone out. Suddenly they're against mass migration. Wow, welcome to the club. A lot of people criticized me for this. They said, shouldn't you be cheering them on? Shouldn't you be celebrating this? Matt Walsh responded to my observation. He said, quote, there's a certain faction of the right that has decided to countersignal an immigration moratorium because they need to always find a way to disagree with me and Charlie, no matter what we say. Well, okay, then go ahead. Why not dye your hair purple and come out as pro-trans next? This was his response.
Yeah, it's pretty cringe.
Well, Matt Walsh, we're not countersignaling an immigration moratorium. On the contrary, I and my faction, the Groypers, have been against an immigration moratorium for the last 10 years. We have been in favor of an immigration moratorium for the past decade. And we are now. And I'm not countersignaling, I'm making an observation, which is that all of a sudden, the three of you who work for the conservative establishment and who have towed the conservative establishment line on immigration for 10 years, conspicuously, simultaneously, have now changed your position overnight. Apparently acknowledging that this has happened is a form of countersignaling. They believed one thing for 10 years. They were working against us, working against an immigration moratorium for 10 years. Working against and countersignaling an immigration moratorium and those that supported it for 10 years. You were complicit in the cancellation of those people for 10 years. And now, all of a sudden, overnight, you have a different position. You have the exact opposite position. I must have missed something. I must have missed an apology to all the people you canceled and whose life ruination you were complicit in. I must have missed the acknowledgement that you were wrong for 10 years, that you misled your audience.
All right, Groypers. I'm gonna have to be rude here. I'm sorry. Razzle Cherry and Justin. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to go full screen, and I'm gonna have to go. I need to talk to you. Okay. I just want you to be ready. Okay, and I am ready. I'm ready to pay. So I'm gonna bet you, Justin, and I'm gonna bet you, Razzle Cherry, $50 each. I'm not a rich man. Okay. I am doing this job. We are seeing good numbers. We are getting like good ROI, but I'm not a rich man. You know, I'm paying bills right now. But I'm going to bet you $50 each for 2028. So the reason why these conservatives are moving to an immigration moratorium is because they're seeing the heat that's underneath Maga. And so it's the tail of the dog wagging the head. That's what's going on, okay? So instead of the head telling the tail what to do, the tail is telling the head what to do. All right? And so what's going on is they're seeing the amount of heat that's around MAGA against anti-immigration and around the mass deportations, where they're like, holy shit, these people are hardcore. They got a lot of energy. They don't give a shit if they're watching, Hispanic mothers cry as they're separated from their children. This is political capital and energy that we can capitalize on, right? So that's what they said to each other. They were like, wow, that's where the heat is. Let's go there. But let me tell you what's going to happen. Every time that there is a massive economic shock as a result of the immigration stuff, let's say all the colleges, let's say that we do a ban. And by the way, they said on specifically third world immigration. They didn't say all immigration. So they're still accepting Indians and Chinese, by the way, even within their tweet. But let's say that there is a ban against all Indians and all Chinese folk from coming to American public universities. Let's say American public university funding dries up and a bunch of research programs fall by the wayside. They're going to rebel. They're going to call their lawmakers, and their lawmakers are going to pressure the administration to reverse course. And because Trump always chickens out, it's going to happen. Then let's say that these things happen again, where the agricultural industry, restaurant industry, service industry, and construction industry make a phone call to Trump and they say, hey, listen, we understand that you want to target the criminals, but you are targeting all of our workers. You're delaying jobs. You're increasing prices. You're screwing us up economically. Therefore, you can't target us anymore. And Trump, you know what Trump says? He doesn't go, oh, my constituency voted me in by a 51.2%, by a 1.2% margin in order to enforce immigration laws strictly. Therefore, I'm going to do it. You know what he does? He caves. And he is the most hardcore MAGA advocate that you have. He is the MAGA movement. There is no one else that I know of in modern politics who is as charismatic or has the same cult of personality as Trump. And so this is your shot to get your immigration moratorium, to eliminate third world immigrants, to eliminate first world immigrants. This is your shot. And you know what's going to happen when he turns into a lame duck in the midterms? You know what's going to happen in 2028? You're going back to the status quo. You know why? Because the status quo is too profitable for too many people. It makes too much money. There are too many people who are doing well under the current system to the point that you're not going to have this glorious white nationalist revolution. It's cringe, man. It's cringe to me to see you guys buying into an idea so aggressive that it's already unpopular right now, and it's going to be even more unpopular in the future. And you're like, we are inevitable. And it's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. What's going to happen is your entire hardcore Zoomer base is going to grow up, and then they're going to become subject to the same economic incentives that I'm a part of, where, yeah, do I want white people, white working class people to make $30 an hour? Yeah, I do. But is that realistic or possible within a capitalist, mixed economy, capitalist economy? No. Is that the way the American structure is set up? No. Is that something that we can flip a switch and get to overnight? No. So you're just going to have to grow up. Sorry. You're like this is your political moment and you're already floundering. Pretending that it's going to be your political moment in 30 to 50 years. No, it's not. It's just not going to be. The waves are crashing in the opposite direction and you can't read the tides. So I'll bet you this is the bet to Razzle Cherry and to Justin. You can come back and collect if I'm wrong. In 2028, there will not be a standard bearer of the Trump MAGA anti-immigrant movement that will be able to carry the same momentum that Trump has, and you guys are going to have to go back to the status quo. That's my bet. So in 2 or 3 years, come collect your $100 if you feel so confident. Anyways, I'm going to mute myself so I can eat.
Audience that you fought on the wrong side against the right people, against the patriotic cause for the last 10 years when it counted. I must have missed when you explained why and how you changed your mind. I must have missed the reconciliation, maybe the humility to say, I was wrong for 10 years. This is how I figured out I was wrong. Now I humbly ask that people respect my opinion in the future. Because all I saw was a complete 180 so fast, it's like I got whiplash. I broke my neck. That's how fast the position changed. And if I merely observe that this has taken place, oh, now I'm not in favor of the immigration moratorium. Now I'm not sufficiently right wing. Well, let me call your immigration moratorium and let me raise you one more. Okay? Matt Walsh and Charlie Kirk said they're against third world immigration. I don't know what that means. I don't know what the third world is. What's the third world? Earth? What's the third world? Are you referring to the planet Earth?
They're talking about Central and South American immigrants because they would still want Indians and Asians who are rich. All right. I'm going to catch up with chat for a second, even though I only gave Nick a moment to speak, because there are things that I need to address. Short Stack Goblin says, right now, you can't get most white people to agree the U.S. Constitution is good. Fix that first. I mean, I agree. That's what I'm trying to do in my meager way. Justin says, if only white people can create America, France, Germany, then why would we replace white people? Justin, your scope of history is like 3 decades. This is what pisses me off, man. This is what legitimately pisses me off, is you have like no sense of history. You're like, Europeans are like the best thing since sliced bread. And it's like, yeah, in a lot of ways we are. Technologically, modern economics, like all that kind of stuff. There's plenty of things that Europeans have accomplished that you could and should be proud of Europeans and European descended folk of doing. But also, 150 years ago, we weren't tweeting at each other. We had a civil war over the institution of slavery, and 500,000 people in the United States died killing each other over slavery. Then when it comes to Europeans, France and Germany, 2 generations ago, this is how ignorant the Groypers are, which is shocking. My mom and dad are the kids of people who blew up France and Germany. My father's father destroyed Germany because they did not have the ability to culturally reconcile with Germans. So for you to act like you look at modern industry, you look at modern technology, you look at modern industrialization, and you're like, oh, this is amazing. You're like, oh, only Europeans are capable of this. Number one, that's not true. China dominated the ancient world. India dominated the ancient world. And the Middle East and North Africa dominated the medieval world. And Europeans were backward barbarians picking lint out of their belt. They didn't even have lint to pick out because they didn't have clothes. They were mountain rebels. They were mountain barbarians. My people, the Irish people, were bog-dwelling, rock-throwing rebels for 500 years. What the fuck are you talking about, man? So just pretending that just because we're on top right now, we're always going to be on top is cope. Thinking it's always been like this is cope. Thinking that civilization only emanates from Europeans is cope. Like, dude, you have no sense of history. None. It's insane. Like, you don't know what you're talking about, and you're listening to liars. You're listening to people who spend all fucking day coming up with an ahistorical narrative about how fundamentally correct they are and getting pissed off about it. And you're like, wow, they sound confident and pissed off. They must be correct. When they're not. They just sound confident. That's all that's going on. Like, your evaluation of information is terrible. Anyways, let's catch up with a little bit more chat, because Justin shouldn't absorb all of my energy. And Justin, I'm not going to be trying to be too rude, but holy shit, some of the things you said trigger the fuck out of me. Bud123 says, white man's burden, making white man jokes. Lol. Thank Brandon says, good morning, Connor. Did you enjoy Poppy's Day? I did. I did nothing. It was fantastic. I got on my laptop. My wife was so nice to me yesterday. Even though, we're fighting about this and that, but it's things that are like easily resolvable, but we're fighting about this and that. She was such a fucking angel to me yesterday. Literally got to wake up, slept in as long as I wanted to. She handed me a matcha latte as soon as I woke up from Starbucks. So good. I got to dick around on my laptop and half-ass do slow work shit on my laptop without the kids screaming and punching me and all that kind of stuff, which I love my kids, but they do have a tendency to interrupt me while I'm working. And it was just a beautiful day. Yeah, so Father's Day was beautiful, and thank you to Mrs. Points for enabling that beautiful day. Whenever Nick talks, I hear the filthy Frank no one gives a shit meme. Well, dude, I wish I heard that. Dennis says, what is it about fear? Why are these guys afraid of everything? What happened to give me? You're tired, you're poor, you're huddled masses, yearning to breathe free. Well, I don't want all of the tired and poor and huddled masses, right? But I think the main thing is obviously like going outside into a functional world. I think that's the main thing. I think they don't go outside, and if they do go outside and they want like confirmation bias, they just go to the hood and then they just like watch people deal drugs and shit. And that's like, they're like, oh, all of America is like this. And it's like, no, it's not. No, it's not. Beef Supreme. And by the way, guys, we're hitting 100, so you're going to have to do at Counterpoints or at Valor Media Network in chat if you want me to read it. Beef Hottest says, let's have a Grill Hottest flag design contest. Yes. Justin says, you are right, though. What Nick advocates for is universally good for everyone. What? Segregation? Segregation is universally good for everyone? I don't think so, bro. Can we say cisgender on Twitter yet? No idea. Re-education is meme, but honestly needed. Dude, I would 100% make a civic education of the American public education system absolutely necessary. Ironside says, I still can't get over a gay Mexican being one of the thought leaders of the right. Well, he's smart and he's funny. That's a thing, man. Like, I know the Groypers are probably pissing him off, but Nick is charismatic, smart, and funny. But I'm telling you, you need to differentiate between good information and when somebody is just regurgitating bad information confidently. I swear to God, like 70% of politics is just saying shit confidently. It pisses me off. Aaron Roman says, wow, for a moment I thought you said postmortem. Yeah. Some classic Nick whinging. Where's my apology? So soy. True. You really are a liberal. Laugh my ass off. So hold on. Let's talk about this real quick. Liberal. The United States of America. The United States of America is a liberal or libertarian project, Justin. So liberal in a classic sense, if we're ignoring economics, means maximal human freedom. And when you look at the United States, maximal human freedom is fantastic in 10,000 different ways. It puts the economy on steroids. It puts human expression on steroids. It puts culture on steroids. Maximum liberty, liberalism, or liberty is awesome. It's great. Freedom is fantastic. And you're like a fish swimming in water where you don't even understand how good you have it because you've never had the alternative. And so, yes, in that way, if you're talking about America being set up as a liberal or libertarian project, I agree with you. However, no offense to the liberals in chat, there's a trap of liberalism. And the trap of liberalism is they are not capable of calling out bad behavior. When you say Mexican drug cartels are chopping people up and throwing them into 55-gallon drums and melting them in acid, they're like, oh, that's racist. That's racist against Mexicans. And then you're like, oh, there's these jihadist terrorist dickheads who are suicide bombing civilians, and that's fucked up, and we need to kill them all. They're like, oh, that's racist. That's Islamophobic. When you say, what's another thing? Asians, this is racist, but it's kind of funny. The Chinese folk have wet markets where they don't control what they're doing with their food. And so as a result, they're propagating disease. They're like, oh, that's racist. And it's like, maybe it's a little racist, but it's also just descriptively true. And it's a problem and we need to deal with it. And so if you're saying I'm a liberal, but I'm within that like context of the American founding fathers, then I'll just accept it. I don't give a shit. However, if you're saying like I'm a modern liberal where I just want to get brunch and call everybody racist, I don't accept that. I don't accept that. And I'm going to fight those people, not as hard as I fight everybody else, because I think they're well-intended, but I will fight them to actually start having a spine, because I think that's the main problem is liberals and libertarians and conservatarians are so busy living normal lives. They don't understand that society is falling to shit like very quickly because of their lack of paying attention. Excuse me. I'm sorry that I make so many like nose sounds today. I don't think I'm sick, but I might be a little sick. Kuro uses lurks in chat. Good for you, Kuro. Christian Blair says Richard Spencer is still a racist and populist, but he seems to have somewhat moderated. I don't know, dude. I think he's voting for Democrats out of a sense of like optical preservation. Justin says, you think things work just like intended instead of pressure being applied by interested political groups? That's liberalism, bro. Liberalism is set up so different tribal groups can establish their base, and then they can fight for power within a framework that doesn't lead to us killing each other. What the fuck are you talking about, man? You have like an elementary school level of like political understanding. The other option is authoritarianism. The other option is one tribe seizes power and they just kill everybody else. What the fuck are you talking about? Sorry for getting pissed off, but holy shit, that is just dumb. You think things just work like intended instead of pressure being applied by interested political groups? That's literally liberalism, bro. A liberal system tolerates many political groups in order to operate within its system to see who can gain popular support sufficient that they can implement an agenda. That's actually just politics. You just describe politics like it's a bad thing. Like Nick isn't a interested political group that's trying to apply pressure. What the fuck are you talking about, man? Your political illiteracy is off the chain. Webus Zeus says, this happened in Canada, and colleges and universities had to cut whole programs. Yep. Justin says, Matt Walsh is a Catholic working for a Jew, Judaism being the antithesis to Christianity, and you think now because of protests that they switched their position. This is just naive. Justin, the fact that you think that Christianity is the antithesis of Judaism is hilarious. We are inevitable because the country is dying. Dude, I can't. You're just going to piss me off. You're just going to piss me off. So, Justin, I'm going to take a break from reading your chats just because you're pissing me off. I hope you're having fun. I hope you're enjoying it, but you're pissing me off. Anyways, back to the content. That was enough yapping.
Are you referring to the classification of countries during the Cold War? I don't know what the third world is. I'm not in favor of an immigration moratorium from the third world. I'm in favor of an immigration moratorium from non-white countries. Non-white countries, countries that are not white. I don't know what is the first, second, and third world. I don't know what that means. I think I know what that means if you're referring to some anachronistic classification system from the Cold War. But I think that lacks specificity. So let me call your third world immigration moratorium and let me raise you one. No immigration from non-white countries. Let's be simple. This is a white country. This should remain a white country. We should deport illegal immigrants to sustain the white demographics. We should cease immigration from non-white countries for the same purpose. Will you call me? Will you match me now? Are we on the same page? Or are you going to counter-signal that immigration moratorium? Matt Walsh, Charlie Kirk, Jack Posobiec. I'll do you one better. I think that Jews aren't white. So I think as long as we're on the subject, we shouldn't have any more immigration of Jews in the United States. As a matter of fact, I think that if Jews aren't loyal to America, I think they should leave too. I think any Mexican flag waving Mexican, Palestinian flag waving Arab, every Israel flag waving Jew, I think they should all go home. Because none of them are white and none of them are loyal to America.
Wow, Nick's just set out to fucking piss me off today, huh? American racial demographics 2025. So these should be citizens. %63%. I think it said, yeah. So non-Hispanic white, 63%. African American, 12.36%. Native American or Alaska Native, less than 1%. Asian, 6%. Native Hawaiian, less than 1%. Some other race, 6%. Two or more races, 10.71. Where's did they not include Hispanic as like a subgroup? That's interesting. Non-Hispanic. Okay. And then what about the Hispanic population? It's already happening. They're mixing up the demographics of the Hispanics and non-Hispanics. What percentage of the US is Hispanic? 20%. So, dude, we're already there, man. We're already there. In the amount of shit that you would have to do in order to revert, like you would have to repeal the First Amendment. That's not happening. You would have to repeal the Second Amendment in order to make sure that people can't defend themselves. That's not happening. So what the fuck are you talking about, man? Now, if you want to say, well, we want to stymie immigration. Okay, Trump's your last big good shot at it. All right? Yeah, Trump is seriously your last big shot at immigration in order to try to avoid the status quo. But the truth is the status quo is so economically advantageous that it's not going to happen. So, dude, you lost. You're acting like you're winning and everybody's shifting your way. You lost. You're like the last desperate gasps of this perspective, and you lost. All right. I'm just going to read chat because Nick is pissing me off. Ironside says, Christianity is just a continuation of Christianity, and if the scattering of Jerusalem hadn't happened, it would be indistinguishable from Judaism. No, it's distinguishable because of the New Testament and the belief in Christ. But thinking that Christianity and Judaism are antithetical when one absolutely sprung out of the other and bases a substantive amount of its morality in the former construct is crazy. Is just crazy. Beef Supreme says, Nick is absolutely not a member of the White Club. I called and verified he was never given a card. Listen, Nick Fuentes, that's the craziest thing is the Great Replacement is so real. Our fucking Nazis are Hispanic. You know what I'm saying? They're Spanish, so they're from Spain, so they're Europeans or whatever. But literally, we had to outsource our racism to Hispanics because there weren't enough normal Northern European Nazis. We had to outsource our racism. That's how much our racism has fallen off. It's sad. Then it says Hispanics can be white or brown in Iran literally means land of the Aryans. Sure. Melody says, Nick said the quiet part out loud, already starting to discriminate on who is white. Next, they're going to say the Irish are inside out N-words. Well, yeah. So I'm at the bottom of white. Does Nick have white privilege? Yeah, he's white passing. Christian Blair says, deport Nick and Hassan to an island and see if Vosh coconut theory is accurate. 100%, dude. I would love to save America a shitload of problems by effectively making a deal with Cuba where we just pay them like $100,000 per year in order to keep all our political dissidents on their island. Like, not in Guantanamo Bay, actually just living in Cuba, right? They can just be normal Cuban citizens. That's my solution. LB says, by 2040, 2050, the USA will be majority 51% multi-ethnic. Yeah, and guess what? Whites will still have a plurality and will still be a substantive political base through 2100. And then what's going to happen is there's going to be a white-Hispanic alliance where whites and Hispanics fuse the social conservatism of whites and Hispanics, along with probably some level of redistributive economics between the more free market Northern Europeans and the more redistributive Central and South Americans. We're probably going to find a synthesis of the economic perspectives of the American hemisphere, which would be good. They have really low fertility rates, so it's all hype. Well, not just that, but all the people who immigrate have lower fertility rates after a generation or two. Beef Supreme says, yes, but Islam was founded on the antithesis of Judaism and Christianity. Islam literally preaches those other religions have strayed from the path of God. Christianity said the same thing. Islam is not antithetical to the other Abrahamic religions either. You guys are just coping, man. No offense. I love you, Beef Supreme, so I'm not talking shit. But like, you guys think that these things are oil and water when it's like water and salt water. It's going to mix. So anyways, you guys are crazy. Justin, Connor, your grandchildren will inherit a country similar to South Africa. It will be so bad for whites. No, it's not. No, it's not. You know why? because I have plenty of Mexican and Puerto Rican and whatever in friends, and they're all fucking cool, and they're hyper Americanized, and they're gonna have kids, and we're gonna have kids, and they're gonna go to the same park, and they're gonna play together, and they're gonna go to the same schools, and they're gonna get the same education, and then they're gonna go to colleges, and then they're gonna get jobs, and then they're gonna work those jobs, and then they're gonna pay their bills, and then they're gonna have kids. So yeah, okay, you might have to carry a gun when you go to the rough side of town. Guess what you had to do in the 1980s? Carry a gun when you went to the rough side of town. Guess what you had to do in the 1960s? Carry a gun when you went to the rough side of town. Guess what you had to do in the 1920s? Carry a gun when you went into the rough side of town. What did you have to do in the 19th century? Carry a gun when you went into the rough side of town. It's been perpetually true. No offense, Groypers, but your slice of historical understanding is like the past 30 years. You just have no idea what the world is outside of your blinders. It drives me crazy.
Well, now the
okay. Now you have me defending the honor of Muslims. What the fuck are you guys doing? Islam says somebody who slept with a 9-year-old is a perfect person and is someone to emulate. He was also a warlord, by the way. Muhammad, peace be upon him, Kingslayer Damocles. And by the way, you know what the cope we're going to do? We're going to create a new mythology. Muhammad did not sleep with a 9-year-old. Aisha wasn't actually 9 years old, okay? This is me beefing up a mythos, okay? What was going on is, at the time, purity and chastity and virginity was very important. And so they said that she was 9 so they could just reassure you that she's a virgin. But Muhammad didn't actually sleep with a 9-year-old. She was 18. She was 18 years old in one day. Okay, and then boom, you can stop calling Muslims pedophiles, and they can stop trying to kill you for calling them pedophiles. Easy. I do like your optimism. Well, bet me $100 and we'll see what happens in another decade or two.
Balls in your court. Or are you going to put on a purple wig now and cry about the Holocaust and Holocaust museums? Are you going to tell me about how America's identity is based on ethical monotheism and the principles of the Declaration and the Constitution?
Listen, man, I don't like talking about violence, but I swear to God, as a matter of fact, I can say it in a way that's going to be more palatable. The fact that Nick's mom, I said some edgy shit, right? I said some edgy shit last week, and you know what? I got an earful from my mother because she was like, "Hey, you're better than that. Don't say that shit. It's fucked up. You don't need to be as crass and gross as everybody else." And I fought her a little bit, but I know she's right. The fact that Nick's mom hasn't walked in here and grabbed him by the fucking ear, dragged him over to a sink and washed out his mouth with soap is shocking to me. It's shocking that his mother cares so little about the fucking shit that he says that she has not grabbed him by the ear and dragged him out of the room and washed out his mouth with soap. Crazy.
I'd like to see at Charlie Kirk's next event, let's get a little specificity. At Charlie Kirk's next Ask Me Anything, let's get a Groyper to come up and say, what do you mean by third world? Do you mean non-white? What do you mean by that? Third world, I'm sorry. I'm a low IQ anti-Semite. I don't know what that means. Do you mean the third world from the sun, or do you mean something else? I'm talking about race.
Sorry, I was getting pissed off and somebody said something funnier. Sacred Snow says, I'll do you one better. Aisha was actually a 1,000-year-old vampire. Listen, if that works for the Japanese people, then good for them.
I'm talking about genetics. I'm noticing something. These people from these non-white countries are fucking everything up. I'm noticing these Jews don't consider themselves white, and they're not loyal to America. I'm doing a little noticing myself. Are you going to meet me there? Are you a purple-haired, blue-haired, feminist, liberal?
So he admits to being a racist? Dude, he used to say, race isn't everything, but it's not nothing. And that was a quote from, I think, Buchanan. And so that was supposed to be like the chill thing where he wasn't like a Fed posting racist. Something happened in the past like 3 years, I guess, where he was just like, you know what? White nationalism is based. Like, I have no idea when that happened, but there is a shift in Fuentes where he used to be more chill on race while still being race realist, whereas now he's just like a segregationist.
pro tranny woke left guy.
Hold on. LB says, let's all stop saying race when you mean ethnicity. No, he doesn't mean ethnicity. He means race. So he means white. So he would use a collective definition of white to mean Europeans. And then maybe he would like, you know, somehow find a filter through which to filter out swarthy Southern Europeans or Eastern Europeans. I'm sure there's like some kind of like racial hierarchy of the whites. But what he means when he's saying white is he means descendants of Europe. And then the same thing when he says black, he doesn't just mean like the ethno-religious group of like the Bantu or the Khoisan of like South and Eastern Africa. He doesn't mean like an ethno-linguistic group. He means black, meaning anyone who has any kind of relation to Africa. You know what I'm saying? And their skin tone doesn't matter so much as their like skin tone matters, but the skin tone matters because it's an identifier that you can use to figure out what ethno-religious context they come from. So, yeah. Aisha was a short stack goblin. Hey, guys, don't get me jihadist terrorist attacked, okay? Good God. Beef Supreme, thanks for hanging out. Leonidas Vazura says, damn, Nick is noticing so much. Yeah, dude, he's going off the deep end, man. He's going off the deep end. Are you advocating Nick to be the victim of domestic violence? Yeah. His mom needs to engage in some corporal punishment. All right, hold on. Let me just pause because I feel like I'm disoriented because I've just been hit with so much out and out pride, like unearned pride, unearned confidence, unearned false understanding of history, unearned political position, unearned everything. I think Nick is way too confident about his position, and he's going to get his shit kicked in. Crawling Chaos says, Nick got caught watching trans porn. Allegedly, that was a psyop. At least that's what his friends say. Webazu says, he hooked up with Kanye and went mask off. I guess. Ethnicity in America has been deracinated. True. White is not a race. Human is a race. Don't Nazi-splain to me, Connor. I understand I'm a black woman in racist America. Okay, everybody's using race in the racial context of white, black, Asian, etc. I do have a cousin called Aisha, based. All right, anyways, let's do some box breathing real quick. I'm gonna take a deep breath in. I'm gonna hold for 4 seconds. I'm gonna breathe out. I'm going to hold. Okay, we're recentered. Let's try this again. Let's actually summarize real quick. Nick, for the past 15 minutes, and I only think I got another 5 minutes in me, to be honest, before I want to move to the next thing, because to be honest, it's just been him crowing. What I thought this segment was going to be, I thought it was going to be Nick pointing out that Conservative Inc. has gone towards a more hardcore anti-immigration policy position, while Trump himself has chickened out on immigration in the past 48 hours. That's what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a blistering critique of the hypocrisy of Conservative Inc. along with the cowardice of Trump. That's what I thought I was going to engage with, and therefore I was going to be able to make this a relevant current news breakdown. However, instead of what we've gotten is for 13 minutes, he's just crowed about the fact that he's taken slings and arrows for a decade about having a very hardcore immigration position, and he still has more hardcore racial positions, and Conservative Inc. broke his way a little bit. It's taken him 13 minutes to say that. So, Foundational White Wakandan says, well, I see where this is going. Let's call everyone racist and Nazis and declare ourselves victorious. Adios. Foundational White Wakandan, I'm not even the one calling him racist. Nick is just saying I'm racist. I think that's hilarious. That's actually really funny. We have a Pepe Frog wearing an SS uniform, pretending to be offended that we're going to call everyone racist and Nazis and then declare ourselves victorious. When I'm, relatively speaking, engaging with the ideas, Nick Fuentes himself is saying that he's a segregationist and a racist. And then you're acting like you got offended so you can leave? What? What? Frogman in an SS uniform, come back. I didn't mean to offend you by calling the Frogman in an SS uniform who follows like a race realist, remigration, ethno-nationalist. I didn't mean to offend you. Please come back. Like, what the fuck? Oh, that's funny. Grassroots says, I've been working for like 30 hours straight. How'd Trump chicken out on immigration? Hi, Grassroots. He tweeted out that he was going to stop deportations of people who worked in agriculture and entertainment. He got a phone call from people who worked in agriculture and hospitality, and they said, you're screwing up our business. Stop deporting our workers. And he was like, oh, okay. And then he tweeted it out. Look, he's one of the good Nazi frogs. Dude, apparently. That was crazy. I can't believe that like a Groiper quit because he got called racist and it hurt his feelings. That's actually really funny. All right. Let's give him another 5 minutes to see if he can articulate another point besides I'm right and Con Inc. has no spine, so they came my way. But if he does that for another 90 seconds, I'm going to move on. I'm not going to sit here for 40 minutes of Nick Fuentes crowing and self-filleting. I do have other stuff I want to cover.
Let's say something else. Let me remind you of how we got here.
No, I'm good. I'm good. We get it. Let's go ahead and summarize that real quick. Conservative Inc. said that we need an immigration moratorium on people from the third world. Nick Fuentes has viewed that as conservatives coming his way. He's using that as evidence that he's just correct about everything all the time, which he's not. I can explain 10,000 reasons for why Nick Fuentes' historical perspective is absolutely fucking dead wrong. I can explain how his racial perspective is counterproductive. I can explain how his political landscape that he believes that he's inevitable. I can explain how that's probably not going to come to pass. And so as a result, I get it. Nick thinks he's right. I think he's wrong. Conservative Inc. went his way. He's happy that they went his way, but it's not enough. I get it. All right. Moving on with the Nick Fuentes content brain damage. When will Trump end the race riots? Are you excited? I'm excited.
Our featured story is about these big riots. I'm sure you've seen it all. LA has exploded all over each other with major anti-ICE, anti-immigration enforcement protests. And I'm sure you've seen the pictures, the videos, the dirt bikes, the Waymos melted into the street. This all started on Friday. On Friday, as part of the Trump administration's increased enforcement actions against illegal immigrants at job sites and workplaces, they led a major immigration raid in the fashion district at a garment warehouse. They arrested about 40 people. It wasn't a huge deal, but they did so in armored vehicles and full military outfits that looked like a military occupation. Many activists came out and protested these enforcement actions at the ICE headquarters, at the detention facility, throwing eggs at them, fireworks, protesting, spiraled out of control, turned into a huge demonstration, and they led a siege against the ICE headquarters in downtown Los Angeles. They breached the parking garage and defaced and vandalized the cars, destroyed the tires, tagged with graffiti the entire building, and law enforcement was quickly overwhelmed. Trump administration announced the next day that he was deploying thousands of National Guard troops, federalized the California National Guard, and sent in 2,000 troops. Protests got worse and more violent on Saturday and last night. They continued today. Today, the Trump administration announced he was sending in the Marines. Hundreds of U.S. Marines deployed in a capacity which is not made clear, actually, because it's technically illegal for both the National Guard and the Marines to serve a domestic crowd control or law enforcement role. This is a story from the New
I think the caveat here being without declaring the, what was it, the Insurrection Act or something like that? Insurrection Act US. The Insurrection Act of 1807 is a U.S. federal law that allows the president to deploy the military and federalize the National Guard to suppress insurrections, rebellions, or domestic violence against state or federal authority. It's a key exception to the Posse Comitatus Act, which generally prohibits the military from participating in domestic law enforcement. So if Trump had declared the Insurrection Act and deployed the military, then it would be legal, but he hasn't done so. And he's reliant on, within the Marine Corps, there's something about its charter. I was told about this in boot camp. I couldn't find you the exact thing without doing it. But the Marine Corps has a provision where it says that like whatever duties the president may direct as a part of its like operational charter. And so the way that that's been legally translated to is in an emergency, Marines can be deployed anywhere within like 24 hours in order to take on like a mission of like critical national interest. And then Congress can like ratify it or declare it legal or illegal or fund it or not fund it. But it's only supposed to be used in emergency situations. So if Trump actually had the stones, I would say he should say, oh yeah, this is an insurrection. Grassroots says, why would you ever need the Marines when we have a Coast and National Guard? That I don't understand at all. He's just trying to be heavy-handed so he can squash it and project strength. Ironside says, yeah, 500 U.S. Marines pulling up in Black Ford Raptor trucks, helicopters landed, Ram, raw, LA is under siege, under lockdown. Fung Dark says, in Posse Comitatus, it includes actions authorized by the Constitution or Congress, and we know he thinks the Constitution allows him to do whatever he wants. Yep. Aaron Roman says, when will people face justice for the harm they are doing to our country? No idea, brother. We're just doing our best.
New York Times, it says, quote, the United States Northern Command said on Monday that the Trump administration was deploying a battalion of 700 Marines to Los Angeles to protect federal property and personnel. The Marines will join hundreds of members of the California National Guard who deployed to Los Angeles on Sunday. The Guard troops were called in by President Trump against the wishes of Governor Gavin Newsom after days of clashes between the authorities and demonstrators protesting the Trump administration's crackdown on immigration. Mr. Newsom said that the order to deploy the National Guard was purposefully inflammatory and called for it to be rescinded. Protests broke out on Friday when federal agents searched the city's garment district for workers whom they suspected of being undocumented immigrants. Demonstrations continued on Saturday, both downtown and in the suburb of Paramount. Trump signed a memo on Saturday ordering 2,000 National Guard members to deploy to LA. On Sunday, nearly 300 members took positions in the city. Some protesters fired fireworks at police officers under a bridge. Several driverless Waymo cars were set on fire in downtown LA. The protests were getting increasingly worse and more violent, said the police chief. More than 150 people have been arrested since Friday. 150 were arrested in San Francisco, where demonstrators and police officers fought downtown on Sunday night as well. So this is where we are. And by the way, it's very predictable that it would turn out this way. I said this last year. I think many people said this, which is the moment that you get immigration enforcement, you are going to get dramatic, violent pushback from the left. And mostly because of the optics. It's going to be unavoidable. If you're carrying out a mass deportation, we're talking about thousands of arrests every day. If a mass deportation is 1 million people per year, you're talking thousands of arrests every single day for years. You can't do that in a way that is nonchalant. You can't do that in a way that is not noticeable. Because in order to carry out an operation of removing millions of people, the same videos that you saw of caravans entering the border, entering the country, you're going to see them going out. You're going to see raids at job sites, Home Depots, construction sites, restaurants, immigration offices where they have their immigration hearings. It's not going to fly under the radar. And as these raids are stepped up, as the numbers increase, you're going to get, first and foremost, coverage from the media and hysteria from the media. They're going to put a camera every time this happens on the raid, on the crying parents and children in the detention facilities, in the courthouses, at the Supreme Court, where all of this is being adjudicated. And the narrative is, of course, going to be that Trump is Hitler, ICE is the Gestapo. They're going door to door, right? I mean, door to door is like the catchphrase. They're going door to door like Hitler's Gestapo, raiding houses of crying children, separating families.
He's saying it sarcastically like it's a joke. I know this is my fault for believing in the Constitution of the United States, but I'm gonna read this to you, and I'm gonna tell you that this was the way that this was explained to me. Okay. The Fourth Amendment of the Constitution says, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. So the way that this is supposed to work, and the way that this was articulated to me as a law enforcement officer going into the career of law enforcement, I'm going to full screen this so you can see my beautiful face, and so I can look into your beautiful eyeballs as we share this together. The way that this was articulated to me as a law enforcement officer is that every American, and pretty much everybody in the United States, has a right to not be harassed by law enforcement. Law enforcement can fight a crime, but I basically what was said is that there's so many laws on the books in the United States of America that if you follow someone around long enough, you'll find them committing a crime. Even rich people will get a DUI. Even rich people will blow through a stop sign. Even a rich person will, put a candy bar in their pocket and then forget to pay for it, and then therefore they're guilty of shoplifting, right? So even the well-to-do accidentally commit crimes some of the time, right? Even if they're the most well-intended people on the planet, you can get a nice, law-abiding, rich person to commit a crime. So we're trying to have a standard that's universal, which means that even the poor people are entitled to freedom. Even ethno-religious minorities and homosexuals are entitled to freedom. And so what that means is, unless you actually can see a crime occurring that you can articulate, you leave people the fuck alone. And that's one of the things that I like about American law enforcement. That's one of the things that I wish American law enforcement adopted is, if a member of the state who is armed, armored, and granted authority of the courts is going to fuck your day up, they better have a good reason, right? That is the way that I think law enforcement should be done. And so, and that's the way that I did it. That's the way that my supervisor did it. There were other supervisors that were more JBTs. They were more jackbooted thugs in approach, but I didn't like working with them for that reason, because they kind of went out into the community and looked for excuses to jam people up. But in my opinion, that just builds a sense of distrust between the community and law enforcement when you go out every single day looking for a reason to jack people up. And when you fuck with working people, because working people wake up, they put on their work boots, they go to work, they bust ass for 8 to 12 hours, they pay their taxes, they pay their bills, and they go home. So there's a difference between fucking with drug dealers and fucking with murderers who are doing evil shit every single day, and fucking with working class stiffs who you're just trying to jam up on random bullshit, right? There's a reason, and one of them socially productive and one of them isn't. So one of the evil things, one of the bad things that I think is a violation of the spirit of the Fourth Amendment is, I saw this the other day, and it's a principled violation of the Fourth Amendment, was there was a Hispanic dude who ICE jumped out on, put up against the wall, and then was like, you're under detention for the suspicion of being illegal. And then the dude's like, in perfect English, like obviously he has a Mexican accent, but he's like, fuck you, I'm a citizen, right? And so ICE backs off a little bit, and then he produces an ID. They run him, and he's a fucking citizen. But why the fuck do we have cops running out on random Hispanics in order to fucking harass them during their workday? That's obviously a spiritual violation of the Fourth Amendment, even if they can articulate like, oh, we got a description of some random Hispanic guy that another informant said was illegal that was walking down this street. Even if they could somehow articulate it through paperwork, that would be the only way that I think that guy should be getting jammed up. And I almost guarantee you, based off of the way the raids are being conducted right now, they don't have warrants. They don't have the ability to articulate specifically why they're going the places why they're going. They're just like kind of like smashing anthills where they're just going into random places that they know there's probably illegal immigrants. They're detaining everyone and they're seeing who runs, and then they're arresting the people that are running. And then the people who are allowing themselves to be detained, they're going through their shit and then lining up people to be deported as well. So yeah, so we effectively have a gross violation of the Fourth Amendment of the United States. Justin says people who shouldn't be here have to go. 10 million illegals during Biden's term. For what? Justin, I'm going to ask you, because I want you to be able to articulate it besides race. What social benefit are you achieving? What economic benefit are you achieving? What is the threat and the harm to the United States of America? Because you can say there's rapes and murders. Okay. Incarcerate the rapes and murderers. Kill them. I don't give a shit. I believe in capital punishment. If somebody rapes another human being, kill them. If somebody murders another human being in cold blood, kill them. I don't care. So rapes and murders is not a good enough reason to deport an entire class of people. Kingslayer is an immigration hawk. So I should say they should get work visas, right? If they're socially productive human beings. Kingslayer says law enforcement doesn't care about the Fourth Amendment because law enforcement is rarely, if ever, criminally punished for violating the Fourth Amendment. I'll agree that there's enough exceptions to the Fourth Amendment that effectively law enforcement always plays in the gray of the Fourth Amendment, but that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be at minimum be culturally enforced. LB says unlawful search 6 is due process, 9th and 10th Amendment, federalism and states' rights. Yeah, dude, where's the pride in the Constitution of the United States? Where's the people who like the Constitution of the United States? Even the Irish are entitled to freedom. Thank you, Sapient Green. Beef Supreme says the cops do on the 4th. Cops don't care about the 4th. Lol. No, I cared about the 4th. My supervisor cared about the 4th. Plenty of cops care about the 4th. But there's also plenty of cops who are looking for exceptions to the 4th so they can juice their stats. Crawling Chaos says, funny how LAPD and LASD ended up shooting rubber bullets at each other at the No Kings demo. Based. I don't drink and drive. Sad. You're missing out on incredible adventures. Aaron Roman says, putting yes men and yes women in charge over experienced professionals doesn't help anything. Yup. General So says these fake IDs must be getting advanced. Yes. How about the Marines detaining civilians? Yeah, it's even more of a stretch. Now, I think the Marines, if I heard correct, they're specifically defending property and buildings. And so I think they can run up and detain you if you're trespassing or violating. But again, like, yeah, I don't think the Marines are being used for ICE operations. I think they're being used defensively. I don't even think Marines have the operational complexity to participate in detentions of random Hispanics. Dank Brandon says, Connor, this is the same reason I get so mad about the stories of Abrego Garcia. He may well be a criminal, but it's my government's job to prove that to me before they are allowed to deport him. Yeah, relatively speaking. Or at least prove that he doesn't have any right to be here and doesn't have a stay order. Therefore, he is legally authorized to be deported. Justin says, none of that matters. People who shouldn't be here should go. Do we have laws or not? Yeah, we do have laws. And by the way, the Fourth Amendment in the Constitution of the United States of America is the supreme law of the land. So if your substatute violates the Constitution, your substatute sucks ass. Dr. Play Doctor says, legit question on getting arrested and being demanded to produce ID, which you're not even required to carry. At what point do you get to resist law enforcement, if ever? I would say that this is my legitimate advice, Dr. Plague Doctor. You can beat the rap, not the ride. Okay? So I would never advocate for physical violence against law enforcement because, again, I'm going to say it again. You can beat the rap, not the ride. So let's say that you're Hispanic looking, you get detained just for being Hispanic. You don't have your ID, you get detained and sent to ICE. I would sue the fuck out of the agency that detained you and sue the fuck out of the agency that kept you. 100%. Because you could probably win a decent lawsuit. Number two, you're going to set legal precedent. Number three, if you fight cops, they have an excuse to beat the fuck out of you at minimum and at maximum kill you. Illegals are not Americans. The Constitution is not for them. I'm going to say this again. Justin, I don't expect you and me to agree with this. Sorry, my nose is very itchy. I think I have a nose hair out of joint. You've watched me for 2 hours. I haven't done cocaine. When it refers to people, the Constitution is explicit when it says citizens versus people. And when it says people, it's all people who are within the jurisdiction of the United States. Christian Blair says, freedom for the Irish. I put my foot down on Italians, though. Agreed. LB says, it's not a stretch and you're missing the point. The Marines cannot be deployed on U.S. soil without the Insurrection Act, period. Yeah, I agree with that. You get all flustered about things that I'm not disagreeing with. Grassroots says, I have never driven a car drunk. I have, however, maybe never sailed my old boat sober. All right. My nose is so itchy. Why is it so itchy? Sapient says, appealing to the Constitution and the rule of law seems of little use to MAGA. They seem more interested in having a king than a constitution. Well, good thing we had that protest over the weekend, right? All right. Anyways, back to the content. But the fact that, we're acting like this is a good thing is cringe to me. Anyways.
Because they're not white. There's always like this. Of course, they're all brown. We're not getting a huge illegal immigration influx from Italy, or Spain or something. They're all brown because they're coming from Mexico and India and the Northern Triangle and Venezuela. So there's this like racial implicit narrative. They're going door to door, moving brown people for this white supremacist first order Darth Vader Hitler program. Step two, if that's step one, step two is then the left mobilizes. Antifa, the Democratic Socialists, these radical fringe elements from the left,
No, it's worse than that, Nick. You pissed off the normies, too. The brunch liberals showed up. So you're probably fucked.
They are turned on. They're at pause. They're activated. They come out in the streets, and they will impede law enforcement, but they're also going to take over the city streets. Riot, protest. They're going to be visible. They're going to be loud, disruptive, criminal in nature. And this will force a confrontation with the government. We knew that from the beginning. And at the minimum, this is going to be a political problem. It's going to be a political problem in the midterm elections. Because
and my expectation is that the brunch liberals are going to stomp you super hard in the midterms. That's my expectation.
Midterm, for Trump to keep his agenda going, he needs to hold on to the House and the Senate. The Senate's probably safe, but the House is certainly vulnerable. And so if going into the midterm elections, you have a year of civil war, you have a year of martial law, mass protest, riots, kids in cages, family separation, it's the same playbook from 2018, then almost certainly Republicans lose the House. Trump gets impeached again, almost certainly. His agenda grinds to a halt, and before you know it, it's 2028. It's another presidential election. That was the playbook from the beginning.
And not just that, this is my bet to Justin and to the Groypers, Razzle Cherry I saw earlier, excuse me, I saw in the chat earlier, is when it comes to 2028, you're going to have somebody who plays to the rhetoric of MAGA, but they're not going to be as committed as Trump is. So if it's bad optics to have a running civil war in the United States over whether or not immigrants get to stay, they're not going to engage in it. It's going to be like Obama. They might partially secure the border. They might have some level of immigration enforcement, particularly for the criminal element, but they're not going to be catching mothers in elementary school lines to deport the mother while the citizen kids are still inside the elementary school. That's not going to happen. So you better make peace with the fact that you're about to get your asses kicked by the fucking normies. The revenge of the normies, 2026.
Well, it sort of backfired in a way, because this is starting, obviously, this is popping off. It popped off in LA, not a surprise. It was either going to be New York, Chicago, or LA. It's going to be one of these big cities with a huge Hispanic population. LA basically is Mexico at this point. So this is ground zero. Already it's spreading. It's in San.
Sorry, Justin. I swear to God, you exist just to piss me off. If illegals are treated like citizens, LB, then what's the point of any of this? I don't know. Being able to speak your mind, freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, maybe being able to defend yourself within your home, your own home, which is not a right that's afforded to very many people on the planet. Civilian gun ownership is actually a fairly controversial thing that exists fairly uniquely within the United States. Other countries allow their governments to hyper-regulate civilian ownership of firearms, and therefore they don't really have a right to self-defense within their own homes. Limited government within the sense that, I don't know, the government can arbitrarily fuck you over, which is 2/3 of the fucking planet, Justin. So what's the point of any of this? Freedom, liberty, economic mobility, freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, right to self-defense, limited government, all of the things. This is like a fish asking what the point of fucking water is. It keeps you alive and healthy. What the fuck, man? Holy shit. Justin, I could not be more against your politics. I couldn't.
San Francisco, it's in Houston, it's in Austin. We don't know how sustainable this is, if it's going to go on all summer, if it's going to have this contagion effect where it'll spread to other cities.
Yeah. Hold on. Kingslayer Damocles brings up an excellent point. So let's bring up the Second Amendment of the United States, and we're gonna red pill some people on guns today. I could say it without even bringing it up to text, but I want to point it out. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. Let's break that down. In the historical context of well-regulated, you can look up a whole bunch of books in the context of this time. Well-regulated means well-trained. And then militia, in the historical references, and I think Federalist 29, we could probably read Federalist 29 at some point, but there's the unincorporated militia, something like that. There's like the informal militia and the formal militia. The formal militia is effectively the National Guard before the National Guard existed. And then the informal militia is all men aged 18 to 45 and women who are in the National Guard. That's the federal code. So a well-trained militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So I want you to take a look at the operative clause. Is it the right of the militia to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed? So only the National Guard has the right to keep and bear arms? Is that what this says? Because I think anybody who isn't ideologically motivated would be able to recognize that the Second Amendment of the United States of America says it's the right of the people. The generalized people of the United States have the right to keep and bear arms. Okay? So right here, you have to deal with the fact, and this was affirmed by DC versus Heller. This was presumed for like 2 centuries. You have to recognize that it's not the militia or the well-regulated militia that's being granted the right to have the weapons. It's the people. Stick that in your stogie and smoke it.
Depends on how this is handled. But there's clearly a layup here, which is this. These anti-ICE demonstrators have given...
All right, whatever, 4690 showed up just to trigger me as well. Democrats would make sure that not one illegal would be deported if they could. Nah. If there was like a pedophile who had already served his sentences, I think the Democrats would be okay with deporting him. Just going to say, you're fighting a straw man.
Given the Republican side a great gift, which is the aesthetics and the visuals of the protest.
When Moon says, Nick runs circles around anyone else. Generational talent. Valor's impotent seething is funny and sad. Well, then he can talk to me, bro. If it's so easy, you know, he's looking for friends to talk to because no one will talk to Nick Fuentes. I'll talk to Nick Fuentes. I've already replied to him. I've already sent him 2 DMs. I already said, hey, bro, you're complaining. No one in mainstream conservatism will talk to you. No mainstream liberal will talk to you. You're in your little isolated hug box because you're so politically toxic. Nobody will talk to you. I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you about all this shit. When Moon, as a matter of fact, if you're not pusillanimous, run back to your little hug box. I would love to talk to Nick about, I have this written down just for Nick. COVID. He says that COVID was a conspiracy and all the people who were anti-clot shot were vindicated. They weren't. BLM. He's saying that everybody was critical of BLM was correct. They weren't. There's obviously issues with BLM. I have my problems with BLM, but being anti-police brutality isn't a problem. The Ukraine war, he's fundamentally incorrect. Israel, he's fundamentally incorrect. Holocaust, he's fundamentally incorrect. Israel caused 9/11, he's fundamentally incorrect. Israel caused all the MENA conflicts, he's fundamentally incorrect. White genocide, he's fundamentally incorrect. These are all things that Nick has said in public that he was just fundamentally correct on. So if he's not pusillanimous and I'm just impotent seething, then he should own me. He should own me in the marketplace of ideas. I should be the classic centrist libcuck that he can dunk on for easy wins. I have an open invitation. I've sent him a DM. I sent him a follow-up DM. I've replied to 2 or 3 of his tweets saying, hey, bro, you want somebody to talk to? Open invitation, Nick the Knife Fuentes. Open invitation to discuss these ideas. When Moon. So, yeah, so if your little daddy is such a generational talent that he's undeniable and the impotent seething of this channel can't do anything in order to slow down Groiper Nation, take the easy dunk. Should be easy, right? Master of Darkness says, I have a feeling all these people Nick is complaining about have contributed more to this country in one workday than he has his entire career of doing whatever the hell he is. Well, let's face it, he pays taxes. Justin says, yes, Connor, we know. Nick said this already. No need for a bet. Billionaires run our country. They usually get what they want. So you're fucked. And you're impotent seething. All right. Grassroots says, so much of it seems kind of pointless to the people literally coming over the border as asylum seekers because then we reject a claim they can go back without their state's approval. Well, what is it? I think it's like 96% of asylee claims do get rejected. And I'm pretty sure most of them end up getting deported. Natural rights are a silly Gen X meme. Laugh my ass off seething. I'm chill. I'm having a good day. I'm drinking, I drank my Diet Cokes. I'm hanging out with, 100 plus of my best friends and family. And we're reacting to content that pisses us off for their entertainment. All right. I'm not even an individualist, Justin. Justin says, I'm very against yours as well. It's why the country is dying. Hyper-individualism is a cancer. I'm not a hyper-individualist. I'm a communitarian. I think that there's a balance between the individual and the collective, and we have to balance our responsibilities and duties. Fung Dark says, bro, I'll go downtown at some point if there's a legit protest movement making waves. I mean, the No Kings protest, we had a few, we had tens of thousands downtown Central Florida. Dank Brandon says, lol, Connor, did you see Trump is making a bootleg phone in China that will eventually be made in America? I wonder what the tariff on those phones will be. Oh, I'll kill myself if that's true. That's crazy. LB says, owning a firearm is state controlled. So isn't that you have to be a citizen to bear arms per se? It's that the state regulates ownership, arm the immigrants. Well, immigrants, weirdly enough, can have the right to bear arms, but they are pretty strictly regulated. Yeah. Anyways, last comment, then we'll get back into it. What is your take on Scalia's ruling in the Heller case, especially the second part of his write-up? I'd have to read it, brother. We'll read it on stream. Check the part of the Constitution where it says for free white men. Constitution for free white men. The Naturalization Act of 1790 established the first uniform rule for naturalization in the United States, allowing free white persons to become citizens after residing in the country for 2 years. This act, however, explicitly excluded other groups, including Native Americans, indentured servants, enslaved people, free blacks, and Asians. Excuse me. The act required applicants to be of good moral character and to take an oath of an allegiance to the Constitution. So, because in 1790, this is your argument. When Moon, were you in an accident? Do you have like severe brain damage? So 235 years ago, back when we had a totally different conception of race relations, you want to revert back to free white men of good character, even though we fought a civil war over the emancipation of black folk. And what was it? The 19th Amendment? Actually, I think that's women, right? So let's do post-Civil War amendments. 13th, 14th, and 15th. So 13th Amendment in 1865 abolished slavery and involuntary servitude except as punishment for a crime. 14th Amendment ratified in 1868 it defines citizenship requiring due process of law and ensues equal protection under the law for all citizens. 15th Amendment ratified in 1870 it prohibits the denial of the right to vote based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. So let's go ahead and read the 14th because that's part of the Constitution, right? You agree that we have an amendment process that over time we can change the law using constitutional amendments because you're not a fucking 60 IQ dipshit. Let's go ahead and read the whole thing. We'll just go ahead and educate our Groiper brothers while we're at it. Amendment 14. All persons born... Who? All persons? All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of the citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person, doesn't even matter if they're a citizen, of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction an equal protection of the laws. So when Moon, I think you agree because we set up an amendment process specifically so we would be able to update the laws as we need, that the current Constitution of the United States, which has been in effect for what is this, 1870? So the part of the Constitution you were talking about was 235 years old, and 2025 minus 1870 is 155 years. So Amendment 14 has been the law of the land for 155 years. It's been in effect for almost 4 times the amount that I've been alive. So because of the way that time works, I'm assuming that you're going to concede that the United States of America has since extended citizenship to all persons born within the United States or naturalized therein, and that they cannot be denied the due process of law. Because you're not some 60 IQ internet brain rotted dipshit, you're going to admit that that's true. Grassroots says Federalist 40 actually brushes on it as an earned right to establish a new government and does refer to 29. Well, we'll read 29 and 40 eventually, but I don't want to bore people to death. Dr. Play Doctor, I do have a problem with the strict interpretation of well-regulated. If well-regulated means just well-trained, why then can't a U.S. citizen just go buy an air-to-air missile? Well, technically you can. With permission from the United States government, you can get something called like a Class 3 license. And within the Class 3 license, you can actually buy explosives and full auto machine guns and all that kind of stuff. So you actually can buy missiles under government strict regulations. People would argue that that is an infringement of your right to keep and bear arms, but I'm not the same way that the First Amendment can be regulated in certain ways, like the crime of assault. Or, I think that the Second Amendment can be regulated for which kind of arms you can keep and bear. But I think that I think any prohibitions against concealed weapons permits are actually unconstitutional. Afro Jew 89 says, not even just the right of citizens, but the people. Exactly. Beef Supreme says regulated also means rules and standards. It's the right of militias who are citizens, aka the people, the military, not citizens. Beef Supreme, if you're arguing that it's not the right of the people to keep and bear arms, not only are you wrong, but I don't know how else to articulate it to you. You're just fucking wrong. Like, not only are you wrong, the courts have affirmed that you're wrong. So, Justin says, so the Constitution is for the world and not just America? Yup. When Moon says, Nick is correct about all those, obviously. Well, then it should be an easy conversation, right? If he's totally correct about his perspective and he cannot be challenged and he's a generational talent, it should be an easy dunk fest, don't you think? He should just be able to blow me out on all of these perspectives. When Moon, you fucking idiot, you fucking dipstick. The founder specifically said for free white men, why is everyone ignoring this ultra important categorization? Because in the process of time, the founding fathers left an amendment clause to the Constitution where Congress could pass updates to the Constitution of the United States. And because of the way in which time works, those amendments would take priority over the shit that came before, because it's actually quite difficult to pass a constitutional amendment. So because people from 240 years ago said that the United States was exclusively for white men of good moral character, and then 155 years ago, the Congress said, you know what, that was kind of fucked up. It actually means all people born within the United States of America, and it actually means all people who are naturalized within the United States of America. Through the concept of time, I don't know if you've heard of it, but through time, it was expanded to not just be white European men of good character. I hope you can track that, because otherwise I have a feeling like you need to email me your personal information so I can call your social worker, because I don't think that you should have access to the internet if you can't understand what I just said. Grassroots says, it takes months to process some of these claims. I had a tough time finding a graphic for it, but those rejected asylum seekers then get to work here. Sure. That was actually part of the new legislation, was they were trying to expedite. They were trying to have a pre-trial hearing where they saw whether or not the asylee applications were even valid so they could reject and deport faster. Yeah. Google's Constitution for free white men literally did. I hope you understand the concept of time. Whatever 4690 says, you allow everyone in a war zone to emigrate to the US and they bring their fights with them. Oh my God, dude. You guys aren't even trying. You're not even trying. The Constitution is obsolete. Do you know what an amendment is? Has God cursed me with your existence? Has Nick Fuentes never told you guys what the Constitution is and how it works? Did you not get this in middle school civics? How come your daddy has a decade to educate you on how in 1790 the Constitution of the United States said free white men, but he wasn't able to educate you that in 1870 it got amended to include all people born within the United States and all people naturalized within the United States? Why did he omit that very important detail? I can't tell if you're trolls or stupid. Oh my God. Brother. Oh my God, that's actually just political corporatist fascist bullshit. Okay, last two comments, then back to the content. I'm happy that this, started a very passionate conversation that is able to hold the attention of more than 100 people. I am happy for that, but you guys are actually going to give me a fucking heart attack. Starhawk says, Connor, liberalism's greatest strength is the ability to self-correct, and we do this through amendments. Agreed. Justin says, if it impedes Americans for trying to achieve their best interests, it is obsolete. Justin, I love you, but you're a fucking dipshit. Okay? You have the most freedom of any human being to live throughout history. You have the most economic opportunities of any human being from history. You are a part of the most powerful military and commercial empire the world has ever seen. You can travel wherever you want to go just through virtue of being a U.S. citizen. You can speak your mind through virtue of being a U.S. citizen. You have the right to self-defense through being a United States citizen. You have more civic protections than any other human being throughout all of history because you're a U.S. citizen, and you could do whatever the fuck you want with your life. And instead, you waste your life in my chat arguing that we should resegregate America and that we should kick Mexicans out because despite all of the aforementioned truths about your situation and station in life and history, you think that having too many brown people around you impedes you from executing your best interest. I think it's your personality. I think that's your biggest obstacle to achieving success. It's probably your fucking personality. Last two chats. Matthew says, oh yeah, remember when we treated all those blacks and Indians and Irish so great in the past? Wen Moon says, needs legislation to nuke the 14th and 19th Amendment. Yes, you're never going to get it. You're delusional, Wen Moon. You're fucking delusional. You are never going to get all of women to repeal their own right to vote. You are never going to get blacks and Hispanics and most of whites to agree that we're going to repeal civil rights for like vast swaths of the population. You live in a dreamscape. You wake up every single day deluded. That's sad to me. You're wasting your life. All right. Thank Brandon says, you have to have like a reason to have them or a special clearance for that though, Connor. Yeah, you do. If you're a non-citizen. I hate you guys. I love you. I love you, chat. 90% of chat aren't even the Groypers. And then on the Groypers, I love you on some level because you give me something to engage with. But some of the things you say are so wildly ahistorical and stupid and a waste of your lives that I'm actually going to pray for you. I'm going to close my eyes for 5 seconds. I'm going to pause the content so I can actually pray for you to find your way in life, because it's actually sad to me that you think the way that you should spend your mortal life is following some delusional Mexican freak on the internet that we need to resegregate America. So everybody, close your eyes, even if you're not a religious person, and let's just say a quick prayer for our Groypers that they find their way. Okay. All right. Hopefully God shows you the way.
I'm sure you all saw the picture. It is Hispanics with no legal standing in the country. They're illegal immigrants riding dirt bikes around burning cars, burning buildings, tear gas, waving the Mexican flag. This is radicalizing white people. It's radicalizing the Republican side, but in particular, white people. Because white people are looking at this and saying, wait a second, you're here illegally. Allegedly, you escaped Mexico to come here. We're supposed to believe this is a nation of immigrants, land of opportunity, came here in search of a better life. Now you're violently protesting being deported back to Mexico, and yet you're waving a Mexican flag. So something's not adding up here. There's a contradiction. You're so proud of being Mexican, but you're literally fighting tooth and nail not to be sent back to Mexico. You're, in a way, begging and pleading to stay in America, yet you're not waving our flag, you're waving their flag.
Yeah, do you know why? Because I don't base my... this is why this doesn't affect me that much. Because I don't base my political opinions on half a dozen dickheads burning 3 cars, driving on dirt bikes and ATVs with a Mexican flag. That's why I'm not asking myself these questions. Because I think the garment district workers who are busting ass in barely air-conditioned property in order to make the clothes of America, who are sending half of their money home so they can improve their material conditions back in Central America, I don't see those as the same people as the dickheads riding around on dirt bikes, burning cars. They're not the same people, obviously.
And implicitly, we all understand what that means. What this means is they're not proud of being of Mexico, from Mexico. They think they're in Mexico. They're not waving that flag as the flag of the national government of Mexico. They fled that. They fled Mexico because they ruined Mexico. Mexico's a shithole. And it's not a shithole because of America. It's a shithole because of Mexicans. And you know that because everything south of America's border is a shithole. Brazil, Mexico, Nicaragua, Colombia, all of it. The only place that isn't a dump is El Salvador, and that's because it's a dictatorship with thousands of people in prison. So they ruined Mexico. They came here because white people live here. White people built this place. That's why it works.
Literally, Mexicans are a combination of Spanish and Native American culture. And some of them are pretty fucking white. You would think that, and you think you would know that with the last name of Fuentes. But okay, continue.
They came here to ruin this country. Maybe that wasn't the intention, but that is the effect. And now that we're threatening to return them back to Mexico, they're waving the Mexican flag.
No, not all of them, you stupid fucking dipshit. This is actually where I have to just assume he's lying. Not every Mexican immigrant burned Waymo car. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and Google LA riots and let's just see if we come up with the same 12 pictures. LA riots. This is my prediction before I even click on images. And actually, I'm done with this segment. We'll move to the Iranian segment, and then we're going to be done with Nick Fuentes for a day because this dude actually makes my blood boil. My prediction is we're going to see the dirt bikes and the ATVs. We're going to see the Mexican flag being flown. We're going to see the same 3 Waymo cars that got set on fire. There's probably going to be a half dozen other pictures of people throwing rocks at ICE vehicles. And there's probably going to be a combination of Antifa and, probably Hispanic gentlemen protesting the ICE vehicles. And then we're also going to see a guy in a Misfits balaclava standing on top of a smash car. And then we might see like 1 or 2 LAPD vehicles that are smashed and or burned under a highway. That's my prediction for all of the images that we're going to see. So let's go ahead and see if when we go to images. Okay, Hispanic gentleman wearing a balaclava with some fire in the street. Here's they updated some of the pictures. That's good. Here's Marines securing a federal building. Here's a Hispanic gentleman protesting ICE in front of the burnt out Waymo vehicles. There's the Waymo vehicles. Here's the 2 smashed and fireworked LAPD vehicles under the bridge. There's the Waymo vehicles again. There's the people with the ATVs with the Mexican flag. Same thing. There's some new pictures here. I'll say there's some new pictures here. Oh, these are old pictures though. These are from like the 93 riots. This is a 93 riot picture. Okay, cool guys. Very cool. All right, so you showed me like 2 or 3 streets in LA that were on fire, and this is supposed to be and here's the guy I was talking about with the Misfits balaclava. Here we go. I'm surprised I don't see the dirt biker. The dirt biker was iconic. And by the way, I'm not saying these things are good. I'm just saying he's exaggerating. So anyways, the point is of what I'm trying to say is there's obviously, if there's according to these people, I talked to a gentleman the other day. We're going full screen. Fuck this. I'm ranting, and then I think we're going to watch 30 more seconds. Then I'm going to rant one more time, and then we're wrapping up and moving to the next section. I talked to a guy who said on Friday, I think it was on Break the Rules, right? It's a debate. We'll post it to our channel. I promise. I talked to a guy who thought that there were 50 million illegal immigrants in the United States of America, and most of them were Central and South American. Then he said, when I asked him about why didn't the murder stats increase substantively with this criminal population that doesn't work, according to him, and he said he doesn't believe any of the stats. So already we're off to a rough start. So even though homicide has been cut in half since the 1990s, we're fudging the stats and the stats are all lies. Therefore, even though we've cut homicide in half, actually, we're just lying about it. Awesome. Okay, can't do anything with that. Then out of 50 million people, they're not working. That's bullshit, because every time you kick over an agricultural zone, a construction zone, or a hotel, I don't think the hotels and the agricultural places would be calling Trump to say that he has to stop his ICE raids if they didn't have any foreign migrant labor. That's very dumb. And then finally, they're making it a shithole. So was it a shithole 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago? When was it a shithole, Nick? When was the peak of your birth? Because I'll tell you, in the 1990s, we didn't think it was a shithole, even though we had riots and we had double the crime. Lots of people liked America in the 1990s. Lots of people liked America in the thousands, despite the war on terror. There was lots of cool cultural shit going on. There was lots of cool art. There was lots of cool parties to go to. There was lots of awesome things to do. What I think is that Nick is in a doomer apocalyptic cult. Okay, he's a false prophet of a doomer apocalyptic cult. And what he's trying to convince you of is the fact that the government is against you and they're trying to give you a clot shot. Number one, that's one of the things. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna pull it up. I'm gonna pull up exactly what his arguments are. The government tried to kill you with COVID. Even though the stats don't bear it out, they're also lying about those stats. BLM is a left-wing Marxist revolution. Even though it burned out and it did not even achieve the police reforms that were at the core of the argumentation, we were in the middle of a communist revolution. The Ukrainian war is the liberal empire spreading its fingers. I agree with that. I just like liberal empire because I like mixed economy capitalism, freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, right to self-defense, and limited government. And I think that those are universal human goods. So we actually agree on the Ukrainian war. He just picked the wrong side. When it comes to Israel, the Holocaust is exaggerated. That's what he says. I think that's total fucking bullshit. And I'm pretty sure that I could find tens of thousands of primary and secondary sources that showed that there was an intentional racist program in order to deprive Jews of life, liberty, and property without due process that ultimately ended up in in millions of deaths. Okay? And even he agrees to hundreds of thousands of deaths. He just sanitizes the rest of the narrative. Israel caused 9/11. Absolutely the fuck not. We have petroleum and energy interests in the Middle East and North Africa. Israel just happens to be our ally in the Middle East and North Africa. White genocide, again, is bullshit. Having Central Americans move next door is not killing your family. So, Nick, open invitation. You're dead fucking wrong on all of these topics. You're a false prophet for a doomer apocalyptic cult, and you've sucked in half a dozen young men in my chat into being a part of your doomer apocalyptic cult, which I think is fucking embarrassing because you're wasting your life and you're wasting their lives. And that's a fucking crime. So fuck you, Nick. How about that? Fuck that segment. I think I'm done with that. I think I need something funny. I can only take so much brain rot.